Good morning. I declare this meeting of Kempsey Shire Council open. It's the 15th of March 2022. Welcome everyone. I especially welcome Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Pearson in the public gallery. I remind all people attending this meeting that it is being webcast on YouTube with audio and vision. There should be no defamatory comments made by anyone. The recording of the meeting is available on the internet and is required to be available for 12 months. Private recordings of the meeting should not occur. Only members of the media are allowed to make a recording. All members of the public are entitled to attend council meetings to observe. Please refrain from interjecting or undertaking any behaviour that will stop councillors from undertaking their important task of decision making. Please ensure all devices like mobile phones are on silent mode. On behalf of council, I welcome all people in the public gallery and observing live on the internet to our meeting today. Councillors in attendance are on my left, Councillor VJ Craigie, Councillor Liz Campbell, Councillor Kerry Reddington, Councillor Josh Freeman. On my right, your left, Councillor Anthony Patterson, Councillor Simon Ferguson, Councillor Alexandra Wyatt, and Councillor Martha Bain. Staff here today, got Director Robert Fish, Director of Operations and Planning, Director Stephen Mitchell, in charge of everything finance and other areas. And of course, staff member Ms. Peterson and Mr. Thorogood, manager of lots of things. And also, of course, most importantly, beside me on my right is the General Manager, Craig Milburn. Before we start the formal meeting agenda, I would like to reflect on the difficult times we have had on the North Coast. Many of our communities have been impacted by the flooding, had losses and trauma. On behalf of Council, I extend our best wishes and support of our Shire to them. Our Council staff have again risen to the occasion. Thank you. We'll now move to item 1, the opening prayer. I'll ask Councillor Ferguson to read it for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dear Lord, just help us in our deliberations today so that our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole of the Kempsey Shire. Amen.
Thank you. The acknowledgement of country. Kempsey Shire Council acknowledges the land of the Dunghutti Nation. We repay respect to elders, past and present. We acknowledge the role of emerging leaders to continue to guide us in the future. We extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who choose to be part of our Kempsey Shire community. Item 3, apologies. All people are in attendance, so I don't expect an apology unless someone's leaving early. Confirmation of minutes, item 4. With a recommendation there, I seek a mover. Councillor Patterson moves. We need a seconder. Councillor Bain. Any debate? I'll put the motion as a dissent motion. Anyone dissenting from the recommendation? I declare it carried. I now ask for any disclosures of interest from any councillors on any items of the agenda of today's meeting. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to disclose a non-significant non-pecuniary interest on item 9.2 Kempsey Airport flight training, as I live within 5.5 kilometres of the airport.
Thank you. Are there any other disclosures? Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, could I just announce my conflict of interest? It's I think it'll be declared significant and pecuniary. We are looking to invest in land in the Shire, and when we come up to the one for land sale for unpaid rates, I'll leave the room.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. I declare a non-pecuniary interest as well, in that I live within the 5.5 kilometre radius of the airport, and item 9.2. Any other declarations? Moving on to item 6, which is items passed by exception. All councillors would have looked at these, I presume, and you may withdraw any of them if you wish to speak against, vote against, or speak about. You can withdraw any of those items without any other issues. Councillor White.
I just have a question on 9.7.
Right, and if it in your intention, well, I'm not moving the questions yet. If the questions are relevant, you will then withdraw. Is that what you're saying?
Quite.
Yes, I understand that, but it can be withdrawn after you've decided on the answer that you get to your question. So that's a possibility, okay?
Okay.
Righto. It depends on your question. Right, you have a question on 9.7.
Hang on a second, I'm a bit confused. So I ask my question, and then if I have an answer, if the answer I can then withdraw, or I should withdraw and then ask.
That's what
ask
can happen.
And then withdraw.
Yes, if you wish.
Right.
You can ask a question anyway about any of the items on the exception list.
Yeah.
And you just be satisfied with the answer. But yes, you can ask a question. Councillor White.
Yep. So my question is in relation to the Northern Regional Planning Committee panel that we're putting up, those two people from the Nambucca Shire. Is there a reciprocal arrangement that people from Kempsey get on the Nambucca Shire one? Like, how did that come about? Yeah.
Mr. Fish.
Yes, answer from Director Fish, please.
Yes, through the Mayor. There's the reciprocal arrangement's been in place for a period of time. I'm not sure exactly how long, but certainly for I think for a number of years. Councillor Mayor Rhonda Hoban and Daniel Walsh of Nambucca Valley Council have sat on our panel for a while now. Obviously, I'd expect Nambucca Valley Council would be obviously reporting on their delegates similar to what we will be. That's obviously a decision for them.
Thank you.
Can I continue to ask a question?
You want to ask another question? Yes, please.
May I just follow up with a question?
Yes.
So at some point, we may be putting, or they may be putting up some we may be putting up some nominations from Kempsey Council onto their committee to deal with development planning issues in the Nambucca Shire. Is that correct?
Yeah, so through the Mayor, that's a matter for them. So what you need to do as a council is to resolve who your representatives are on the regional planning panel that will obviously sit on matters within our own shire. They also need to do effectively the same thing for their own LGA, and what they would be resolving, I'd expect would be that our planner will sit on their panel and also the Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor White.
This is the Northern Regional Planning panel. Does Kempsey Council have any representatives on that panel?
Director Fish?
Yes, so through the Mayor. So it's up to you as councillors to consider who you nominate. So you have to nominate two people, and one must have planning expertise. You can basically nominate who you want. Often there's consultants that are sometimes from the local area that are put forward for these panels. It can be a representative within the council itself. But we've had this obviously reciprocal arrangement in place for quite a number of years. It obviously provides for a level of independence in considering like if there's obviously a major development within the Kempsey Shire. Provides, I guess, a degree of separation there in terms of the nominations that we have.
Thank you. Councillor, Mr. Manager, please.
There are a couple of, I guess, 3 independent panels appointed by the state government. They're totally independent and appointed by the state government. And then you have this we've had this reciprocal arrangement, which is pretty common because it does allow for, as we put something up, it's not our councils or our staff assessing it. It is someone totally independent.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sorry, follow-up question.
Another question, Councillor White.
Yes, question? Okay, cool. Yes, I like the independence. That's good. I'm just wanting to ensure that somewhere in a process is that Kempsey Shire Council staff, council are represented on those committees as well.
Mr. General Manager.
Yeah, that would only occur under a couple of circumstances. One, if the state government appointed someone from here, which they won't do because they actually put independent people on it. And secondly, if a council, i.e. Nambucca, actually asks us to be on there as their representatives. There's only a very small committee, and up here it meets pretty infrequently.
Very infrequent, yes. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. I'll be withdrawing the Australia Day Committee because I would like to speak on that. Any other withdrawals? Councillor Patterson?
I was just a question. I was wanting to ask a question about the sale of land and unpaid rates, but if Councillor Ferguson is leaving the room on that,
it's withdrawn.
So if it passed, if we voted to pass it through now, wouldn't he have to leave the room?
No, we can't vote on it now because it's withdrawn. It has to be
withdrawn.
Considered.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other withdrawals? Councillor Wyatt, please.
I have another question on number 11, item 11. Given that they're in the confidential part, should I discuss it should I ask the question in the confidential part?
Yes. We'll withdraw whatever you wish to ask questions on and ask them in the confidential.
Okay, then I'll withdraw number 11, please.
11, legal matters. 11, 1.
The audit and risk one. Yeah.
Audit and risk. Okay. We're withdrawing 11, 3, the audit committee. Audit and risk committee. 11, 1 is still in. So anyone wish to withdraw 11, 1 if you have questions on the legal matters? No?
Okay.
Councillor Patterson?
I have a question on the legal matter which I'd like to withdraw.
Okay, we're withdrawing
11.1.
Okay, withdrawing 11.1 as well. Thank you.
Yeah, we just updated that list.
So we've got 3 withdrawals. Yep. 11.4's got to come back.
Yeah, and those other 2 come out. I'm not going to be able to get the title. 11.4 is in.
Okay, well, it's not up on the screen, but 11.4 is still in. And we'll put the title in a moment. Thank you. Those are the items being passed by exception. There are no other questions. I'll ask for a mover for the items for exception. To be moved, right, Councillor Freeman moves it, and seconded by Councillor Riddington. Any dissent on the motion or the recommendation? I declare it carried. We now move to the mayoral minute 7.1. On page 6 of the agenda. So the slight amendment I'm moving or putting in the motion as I move it. After Mr. Pat Conahan, Member of Parliament, change all non-election candidates in local federal electorates to all non-election candidates in the Cowper electorate. Right. Thank you. And I'm moving the recommendation as printed with that slight change. Realise that it would be a great task for council to write letters to every candidate in every electorate of Australia. But we don't need that happening for our staff.
Can I ask a question on that?
I'm just going to speak to the motion and then you can ask questions for sure. Thank you. ALGA, which is the Australian Local Government Association, which Kempsey Council is a member, is looking forward to trying to get the best out of what happens in the federal election. The federal election is coming up in the next couple of months. It will be called by the Prime Minister at some point. And from that point on, there will be a campaign about lots of different issues. The issue we have to help with is helping fund local government to a better level and making it more relevant in the government of Australia. At the moment, for those who don't know, the National Cabinet that was put together by the Prime Minister in response to the COVID crisis eliminated the Commonwealth meeting of members from all states and the federal government, and also local government was in that CHOGM meeting that was held quite regularly. In the National Cabinet, we're not represented. ALGA is saying we should be back in there because the states are represented, the federal government's represented in the National Cabinet, but the Council of Australia are not. They represent quite a sizable part of the government of Australia, and local council, which we are operating as, has a very important role to play. The Mayoral Minutes report shows that they have a campaign called Don't Leave Local Communities Behind, and that's what this motion will be doing. If all of what ALGA suggests came to being, we would have around $6.46 billion injected into the Australian economy if what is being proposed in this, and it would produce 43,444 new jobs. So it's not to be sneezed at. What is being put up by ALGA should be endorsed by us, and it will do so much better for us if the federal government decides that what is being proposed is worth putting into place. We are going to approach all candidates, including our present local member, asking where they stand on the ALGA campaign points. By putting that to them, we'll be able to inform our local community, the Kempsey Shire community, of which candidate best supports local government. So I put the recommendation to you, councillors.
I have a question.
And then we can have questions, and we can also have debate. Councillor Patterson, you have a question.
Sorry, I apologise I didn't attend the local government meeting, but I just wonder, and this may be not relevant, but does this ALGA address anything about the I vote schmozzle in the elections? Is it going to have I vote in the federal elections?
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
Through Mr. Mayor, no, this is really looking at electoral priorities, and it's done from the national body where the I vote is a state-based issue. So,
thank you. Do we have anyone, council wish to add to the information? Yes, Councillor Riddington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, I know that the ALGA sounds pretty good. How are they going to contribute the 6.46 million and create the 43.44? My next question is, and I know this might be a bit of a bomb thrower, is it our business to get involved in electoral candidates' positions?
Okay. Well, answering the first question, on page 7 it talks about how these suggestions or 7 priorities, if they were acted on by the federal government, that it would independent economists have looked at these and said if they were all implemented, it would add $6.46 billion to the economy. How that happens, I'm not an economist, but that is there, and they wouldn't have put it there unless they had strong reasons to believe that that would be the result of implementing the 7 priorities. Council is always asking for betterments for our council. And one of the things, and this is answering your second question, we are not being political and just supporting one candidate. We're saying to all candidates, what's your position on this? And if they are successful, any of the candidates, and they have a position, well, we can say, you said this would happen. we hold you to it. But I don't think it's taking partisan politics or siding with any candidate. We're just saying we want properly funded local government in Kempsey Council, New South Wales, Australia. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Riddington. Councillor Patterson.
Sorry, one last question, Chair. Just in relation to that, about the, I noticed you said that we would report to the community on what each candidate has said back to the ALGA, what priorities that they would support. In the reporting of that to the community with the many different candidates, would that not be politically incorrect if council didn't report the exact same on everyone? How do we report this person said that they would only support a certain ideal, and the other person said that they wouldn't support it because of financial implications or something?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how council fixes that sort of conundrum up about staying out of politics but yet reporting on political ideals.
Yeah, I accept the idea, Councillor Patterson, that it could be political, but we would not interpret what is the response. I would suggest if they respond to our
question.
No, I haven't finished. If they respond to us with an email or a letter, we will just publish that for people to know about. We certainly would not say this is the best plan or this is the worst plan from any candidate. We would just put it out there so people would have that information if they were considering the impact on local government from this federal election. Next question, yes? That's it, okay. Councillor Campbell, please.
Just a question to Mr. Mayor. When the pro forma came through from ALGA on the motion that they would like us to put, is this exactly the same as what was put by ALGA, or have we amended it to include all the elected candidates, or did it stop at advocacy for the endorsed funding priorities and we've expanded on that?
Now, this is what came through from ALGA, Councillor Campbell.
Yeah.
Exactly, except that bit about having to write to every candidate in Australia. We decided that wouldn't be a good move.
So it was just to leave it at the sitting member?
Yes. Oh, the sitting member and all the local known candidates. So any candidate.
That's what we've changed it to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt, please.
Thank you. I just want to be clear, further into what Councillor Riddington said, is that we're not asking them for we're not then asking their position or stating their position. We are providing information, because I don't think it should be political either, but I fully support that candidates and the federal government need to be aware of an advocacy role, but I don't support it being political. And I would rather, so if we could just take the word, what is your position, but just state the facts rather than the position.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wyatt. I think that's what we would be doing. Absolutely. Any other commentary or questions? No? I'll put the recommendation. Anyone dissenting from the recommendation before you? I declare it carried. Moving on to 8.1, Report of Committees, Australia Day Committee. I've withdrawn that because I would like to express my appreciation to the committee and to all the people who contributed to making it a success. So the recommendation is there in front of you on page 9. Australia Day 2022, held at the Slim Dusty Centre, to me was a success in many ways. Not only did we have people receive awards, well-deserved awards, and they are in the report, we also had 16 new Australians decide to take on the role of being an Australian citizen, and appreciate that. But behind the scenes, there were so many people who contributed to the success of the day. All the staff from Kempsey Council, the people from Rotary who looked after the big breakfast that was fantastic, the musicians, all sorts of people who contributed and did so much. And also it's not expressed that clearly, but the MC for the event, Mr. Milburn, our general manager, did an exceptional job, and it flowed, and I think we appreciated it. It was very hard to sing within your head the national anthem, but we weren't allowed to sing because of the COVID restrictions. But to me, it was a wonderful event, and it shows what good planning can do. And the Australia Day Committee planned and had meetings and took nominations and made decisions. I came in on the end of it, but I must pay acknowledgement to Councillor Campbell, who was the chair of that committee, and it came up with what you saw on Australia Day. Now, of course, to be a success, we need people organising, and the planning and organising that came from that committee was something that was a great tick on good efforts in the Kempsey Shire. I recommend that you support the recommendation, and I now ask if anyone else wish to speak for or against the recommendation. We need a seconder as well, of course. Thank you. Yes, I'm moving it. Seconded by Councillor Riddington. Thank you. I'll put the recommendation. Any dissent? I declare it carried. Moving on to reports to council, we've got item 9.1. It's on page 13. It's the Crescent Head Public Domain Plan, Foreshore Car Park, and it has been put together by Internal Change Project Manager, Sandra Hollands, and it's a very comprehensive report. We have a number of options here. We need a mover and a seconder, and then someone could move that we go into workshop, or we could debate it in open council. I'll call for a mover. Councillor Patterson.
I'd like to move it, thank you. As is.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. If you wish, we'll need a seconder first. Seconded by Councillor Ferguson.
Is it okay now if I move to go into committee?
It is.
Whatever it is.
In a moment, yes, thank you. Right, before we move into committee, I'll ask the mover if he wishes to speak to the motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After quite a lot of deliberation, this has been going on for a long time, but looking at Council's recommendation, I see that this is moving the Crescent Head foreshore area, public domain. This is taking the next steps that we said that we would when this first came to Council. Reading that number 3 in the recommendation that proceed to finalise the Crescent Head public domain plan, excluding the area described in point 1, which is the parking area, which is going to endorse the geographical footprint. This is item 1 for the foreshore car park, and then with public consultation, we'll obviously be bringing back designs for that. But to proceed with this allows council to get on with what we have promised the community that we would deliver. And I see that this area will be developed over a number of different spectrums over the coming 10, 20 and 30 years, as spoken to yesterday by the gentleman that spoke for the, for which one was that?
Ross Foster or Paul Henya?
Ross Foster, sorry, about the changes that have occurred in the Crescent Head area with 4 different surf clubs over the years. I do believe that Council's vision is correct for this area, and I think that over the next, this may be approximately 10 years before it's delivered, but over those next 10 years, I'm sure that council will engage the community and look to make the right steps in this holistic area. And I look forward to the councillors supporting this, all councillors supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. The options here now, and I'll come to that, we can move into committee of the whole, and that will need a motion, or we could continue to debate the recommendation and move amendments and second amendments and put amendments, or we can do the similar thing inside the committee of the whole, where the rules are that we can workshop what we would like to do. So I don't see any lights at the moment, but anyone like to move an amendment?
Move in the committee of the whole. Yeah, I second it.
Right. So you actually got to formally move it. So,
All right. I formally now move, Mr. Mayor, that we move into committee as the whole, please.
Thank you. We need a seconder for that. Councillor Freeman. We have a mover and a seconder that we move into the committee of the whole. Anyone speaking against that? No. So I'll put the motion that we move into the committee of the whole. Any dissent? I now declare we're in the committee of the whole. I'll now ask people who wish to add anything, and if you turn your lights on quickly, I will come through you in a cycle. Councillor Bain, please. Then Councillor Wyatt. Councillor Bain, you can speak.
Oh, yeah, okay. I would like to discuss the proposal that was put at a public forum yesterday about extending the footprint. Now, I understand that there are barriers to that, like contractual, there are legal issues, there are financial implications, but I believe that if we just outright say no to that extension, that we will be adding to the divisiveness in the community. We acknowledge from the public forum and the briefing yesterday that this is a very divisive issue, and I propose that if we included the additional area that's been requested by some members of the Crescent Head community to be included in the scope, doesn't mean that that has to end up in the plan, but it means that it's on the table and discussed, and we bring everyone to the table, and it's an opportunity for that mediation, which is outlined in the report, that the need for mediation. It brings people to the table, and we can have a discussion, an informed discussion. On the other hand, if we just say no, that we're not going to consider it, then we got quite a bit of information post the public forum last night, but that I believe that information needs to be made public. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're recommending we would amend the motion. And do you have some words that you would?
I would like. Yeah.
So we can just put them up so people can see what we said.
I would foreshadow this as a motion.
Yes.
What I would be doing.
Yep.
So I would propose that we amend the motion to include a 13-metre strip on the northern edge of the holiday park to be included in the scope.
Right. So that's one idea coming forward. The next speaker was Councillor Wyatt and then Councillor Reddington.
Yeah, I would like to see the information about the financial implications. Like, what is it? How many sites are being affected? What is financial implication? What is any liabilities for council? Is there any contractual arrangement? And whether there's any legal tenure of that as well, so that can be put in the minutes and put on public record, so that helps make an informed decision. So we need to balance the decision with this quadruple bottom line about environment, community, social and economic. So I would like to see the financial information on public record, as well as any legal implications. Is there any legal situation? Is there a contractual breach with NRMA holiday parks, that kind of thing? And I also have, I think it's a foreshadowed motion that I want to put forward.
Yes, you can put it now.
Okay, which is, there is a lot of information about this Crescent Head master plan public domain plan, there's a golf club plan, there's a Crown land plan. I think I've got a list of about 7 here. And there's a couple of councillors here in the room, plus the leadership team, that have a lot of knowledge. I'd like to foreshadow an amendment that at some point before in this 7-step process, preferably in the first few, that we have a council meeting so that we can really talk about these issues, so that we can be fully briefed face to face with experience and the benefit of other councillors in the room and yourself. Because I just feel I've read all the information, but I would really like to hear the information and for us to discuss it openly, frankly, honestly.
Thank you, Councillor White. A couple of options there. We could defer point 1 to a special extraordinary council meeting. That would have to be a motion from this council meeting. We could get that information now by asking Director Mitchell. You don't wish to have that now?
I'm happy to continue discussing this motion.
Yep.
But sometime in this process, in this next 1 to 7 steps, I would really like an extraordinary meeting of council to
Just
really
to deal with
discuss and workshop, for us to be fully briefed, have open end discussions. What are we thinking? That's what I would like, rather than to read quite a few documents. I've read all the documents, but I just want to hear from previous councillors, what were some of the discussions that have been had? What was some of their community feedback? What are the issues?
Right, we'll have some advice now from the General Manager.
Yeah, probably just through Mr. Mayor, to clarify, council's ordinary or extraordinary meetings are actually to deal with items of business. So there'd be a business paper and a recommendation on that business paper to undertake business. What I think I'm hearing you say is actually you're wanting actually a workshop to discuss it, which is a totally different thing to,
Which could then come back to extraordinary council now.
yeah. Okay, yeah. So that's what I thought. We did have a briefing on this with the councillors a while back, and we're more than happy to actually outline and do another one at some point during this process. That's no issues with doing that. In relation to the comment that Councillor White said before, and this is really for the benefit of the new councillors as well, getting things on the public record, there's a couple of ways you actually do that. One informally and one formally, I guess, is the easiest way of describing it. Formally, it'll be what's recorded in the actual minutes. And the minutes, what's recorded basically in the minutes are the decisions of council. The minutes don't record the debate and the discussion or the points we raise. The other way we do it, and you remember last night I actually said we'll be happy to answer the questions on the financial cost benefit of the 13-metre strip proposal. And we can do that in the meeting now, because that actually puts it on the public record, because it's actually recorded. And that's probably the easiest way for us to actually do that. And Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with you, it's probably best if we do that early in this discussion, so the councillors and the community who are watching both here and online get that context and understand that, so that as the debate and discussion goes on, everyone who's watching it's actually got that quite clear, and they're not operating what the councillor's talking about, sort of thing.
So the context you're wanting to put to people is?
That's in relation to the cost benefit of the 13-metre strip.
Oh, okay, yes. So, Councillor,
between Mr. Mitchell and I think we'd cover pretty well all of that.
right,
Between the two of us. So,
would you like to do that now?
yes, I think it's going to be worthwhile for the councillors and the community to hear that right up front now.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mitchell, did you want to start with that one? And
thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, councillors, what we've done is tried to estimate the impact on the holiday parks from that extra sort of 13 metres in terms of potential lost sites. What we would envisage that would be anywhere between a minimum of 8 and probably a maximum of 12. These are estimates. Obviously, there'll be sort of further surveying work or whatever that would need to occur. But our best estimate would be around about 10. So sort of in the midpoint of that is where we think that would be the sites that would be lost from encroaching on the current holiday park boundary. Those sites some of the better sites at the park, obviously given their location. And given Crescent Head's popularity, those sites largely are fully occupied, and that was consistent with the analysis that we did when we put the holiday park plans to council in April last year. Those sites largely have got a very high level of occupancy. And if we look at using a lost sites of 10, we would be envisaging that the annual impact would be in the vicinity of, say, $60,000 a year. But over 10 years, the impact would be $670,000 to council. The reason for quoting the 10-year period is that's obviously the period of our long-term financial plan, which we would ordinarily look at the impact of items such as this. So the direct impact for council, as I said, would be in the vicinity of $670,000 in terms of lost revenue, and that income, as councillors are no doubt aware, is used to fund works on our reserves, foreshore and Crown reserves. So either in terms of reinvesting back into the holiday parks, maintaining the Crown reserves, or indeed paying for services such as lifeguard services, which the profits from the holiday parks help subsidise. So any reduction in those in that sort of income would need to be would obviously further increase the current deficit that council's operating at. So would create further financial challenges for council. In addition to that, there would be some work that would be required, obviously, in terms of some internal holiday park road works, which would be somewhere in the vicinity of $150,000 to $200,000 to facilitate that change, because obviously the layout of the park would need to change as well. So at the time of those works happening, that's our sort of best estimate at this stage of what those costs would be as well. In addition to that, there's some further economic impacts, obviously, because we're talking about losing 10 sites, of, say, on average 3 people per site per night across a whole year, would have a fairly significant economic impact. In that case, it's different to the loss of revenue that would be felt by council that I alluded to before, but there would be an economic impact in terms of other businesses, because you've got local businesses both in Crescent Head and in the broader Shire, because you've obviously got less tourists that are actually able to come and stay in the park, and therefore their economic contribution to both Crescent Head and the broader Shire would be impacted as well. That's probably the extent of, I guess, the sort of the financial and economic impacts that would be resulting from a potential decision to take that 13 metres away from the holiday park.
And just to add to that, Mr. Mayor, that there are obviously current legal agreements with the managers that would then need to be renegotiated at some point along with this. We would also have to go to Crown Lands, and in the first instance, if council were to do this, the first step would be to see if Crown Lands would approve that. The previous indications from Crown Lands in general discussions is that where they've got an asset that is making a profit, i.e. things like caravan parks, they certainly don't want to see those reduced at all, because they are the ways that they actually assist local government who are managing those, reduce the impact on ratepayers by having those profits go back into the reserves, as Mr. Mitchell has already indicated as well. So we'd certainly need to have that discussion with them as well. Should council go down the road of including the 13 metres, and it is your prerogative, you're free to do that, I think you also need to be upfront with the community to say that there will be a minimum of, I think it's about $160,000 thereabouts to do the road in the first instance as a capital cost, and then there's an ongoing impact of a minimum of $60,000 a year that would result in service cuts or reductions. And you'd be good if you could identify what they were, or just at least generally say and be upfront with the community that that is something that will have to occur to allow this to happen as well. We have assessed this in looking at the recommendation we put to council, and that's why that area of land hasn't been included in the recommendation originally, is because we did this assessment and we don't believe that it is the best outcome for the ratepayers to actually be taking that income away from them and requiring them to subsidise some other road work or similar that might happen on the foreshore there. The impact just using New South Wales, Destination New South Wales, their approximation of the value of a customer per night. If there was only 2 people per night in those cabins, it's over $500,000 a year lost income to the community if you take those away. So that's the other economic impact of that sort of decision. Just a comment in relation to Councillor Bain's comment about including this so the community can have that discussion and bring them along with us. The other side of that is that including it when you know all those facts creates another point of division in the community, because they then will start having to talk about the lost income, the services to be cut or reduced and those sorts of things. So it actually adds another negative, from my perspective, another negative element into that discussion. If the decision's made, and all this is now clearly on the public record, the community is informed about why you make the decision you make, whatever you end up making. And it's a very clear decision for the community to actually understand the reasons for that, and therefore it doesn't need to be debated in there. The consultation, and a number of you have mentioned the noting it in the actual report, the staff have given a lot of consideration to the nature of the consultants who will need to be appointed to do this. And they will need to be very specialist consultants that deal with both the consultation engagement side and the planning side. But the consultation engagement people, we are looking for people who can go into areas that are in conflict, that there is dysfunction within the community, and help to mediate and bring that together. And we'll be looking for a skill set from the consultants who will actually help us do that, to bring the community back together. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager, and thank you, Director Mitchell. Councillor Riddington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions have been answered during that discussion, and I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask a question first, and then I'll come to Councillor Patterson. On page 26 of the report, it talks about the project scope, and it says a detailed analysis of the project footprint to evaluate economic and social opportunities and complexities that could result if the area defined as foreshore was adjusted from what was presented to Council in July 2021. According to the recommendation here, we would be appointing a councillor, this is a consultant in point 2, to lead engagement and designs, and that consultant would then go through and come up with a design options that would be put back to council. So by having the area in the scope, wouldn't we be getting a report back of the economic implications of including it? And that would be an option where we'd say this is going to cost us too much, or it's not going to cost us too much. Would that be the case, that if we include it, would we be getting a report from the expertise or experts that we would have as consultants?
Mr. Fish might jump in here as well. The project scope on the top of page 26, I think that on that table, I think the Mayor was just referring to, was what occurred, and has, I guess, led us to the information we've actually provided you now. The next step really is the defining of the actual footprint, which is recommendation 1, and then following from that, you would then appoint the consultant. You would go through the engagement process, including the establishment of the Community Advisory Committee, and develop up those design options through that whole consultation process. I don't know if Mr. Fish wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, through the Mayor, I'd just elaborate there that, the importance of getting the scope defined up front. So we've got, I guess, a clear area that we're working with and I guess takes away any confusion that may exist. So that was obviously the intent of the engagement methodology, to get that established up front, so we have a clear direction on the area that or the footprint that we're working with going forward. And as the General Manager just pointed out, there's then the subsequent steps with the engagement of the consultant, who would obviously develop the plan, the engagement plan, and obviously the other mechanisms that are underneath that, and also then develop up plans as a result of that engagement. Those design options would then come back to council. It might be one design, or it might be options, depending on the outcome of the work under points 3 and 4 and 5, and then be sought to go on public exhibition formally via resolution of council under that point 6, and then ultimately, obviously as normal, following public exhibition, come back to obviously council for a final determination.
Yes. So my follow-up question would be the development of design options to inform the final Crescent Head plan. That would include, and let's say they've decided they would use some of that land. It might be 6 metres, it might be the whole 13 metres of that northern side of the caravan park. If that was one of the options, would they not have to cost the implications of taking away those land and those sites? And that would be part of the report to us.
Through Mr. Mayor, the consultants will only work on the scope and the boundaries that council determine. So for that to be considered as an option, that would have to be included in part 1 of this recommendation. If it's not included in part 1 of the recommendation, then they will not look at that 13 metre strip or 6 metre strip, whatever it is. The idea of this, and it was very clear from the previous council, was to come back so the council could clearly determine the boundaries. So when the consultation started with the community again, that the community were very clear that this is where we're having the discussion about. It's not the outside the line, it's actually inside whatever this line is. That's the discussion. And it just needs a council resolution about what that boundary is. And from there, the consultants and the community will then work on that.
On the options, yeah.
Yeah, on whatever options they may look like within that boundary.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bain, please. Councillor Patterson, still. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There has been, like I was saying, lots of discussion and lots of council time put into this. We've already been through the process to get to this point. The recommendation, we've got to be careful that we don't make policy on the run. We saw this 13 metre strip just the other day. I don't think it's a fix. I think it's a band-aid. Council has more foresight, I believe, to look at it holistically. As we move on down the track, I see the further development that will come in the Crescent Head Foreshore Park. Who knows what's going to happen with the entrance road, whether it ended up being a ring road in 20 years and there was more cabins put there, who knows? But at the moment, we need to be giving council staff a direction to look at the footprint that we've agreed on, that, like we've been operating in a deficit. So financially, we have to, like Mr. Milburn said, we have to nominate what services we're going to cut if we're going to cut $60,000 a year. And also, if we're looking at taking between 8 to 12 sites away, we also have to look at the businesses at Crescent Head and say to them, we're taking a number of, it could be what we're talking about, approximately three guests per night. Over 10, that's 30, approximately 30 people a day away from your businesses. Because last night, also, if you guys remember in our discussions, that we found that the short-term accommodation stayers are the people who are the big spenders, the ones that go out and buy, restaurant food, etc. Compared to those guys that are getting houses for rent and units, etc. And it may be after public consultation, which it states in this recommendation, it may be after public consultation that the end result is not much different than what we have already there at the moment. But that's what we're going to go out and ask the public to come back to us and talk about. And I would think it's very, very short-sighted of us as a council to say that holistically that whole design will never be looked at. I believe it will be. I believe that there's going to be lots of future development out of Crescent Head. But at the moment, we need to give council direction to deliver to the community what we've promised them and what we've asked them when we done a master plan at Crescent Head. So yeah, we look. I believe we need to support the current recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bain, followed by Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge that there has been extensive engagement, and I heard what Mr. Foster said at the public forum yesterday, and I felt his frustration in that he's been engaged with the consultation from the very beginning. And I understand that the contract with the holiday park is in force until 2027. Has this information around the economic impacts, has that been shared with community previously in some of the engagement sessions, like with the likes of the design teams and so on? So has this previously been in the public forum and some people just haven't taken notice?
Mr. General Manager, please.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it certainly has, and it's been discussed at other council meetings and that as well. So there is certainly a knowledge, whether it's been spelled out in the exact detail in the same way as we have today. It probably hasn't been in that same manner, but it's certainly been clear that there is a definitive financial impact by encroaching into the holiday parks.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, please.
I too have thought really hard and long about this recommendation, and my understanding is if we don't take the recommendation of number one, of the footprint that's put in front of us, and then we go back out to trying to define a footprint which includes a specific area which is designed for car parking. I mean, that's the only conclusion you can come to on that point, because otherwise it wouldn't be so specific in the area and the location. So it's obviously not being designed for green space, or is it? I don't think so. Otherwise it would be not so specific. So if we do decide that that's what we're going to do, then point 2 and 3 are negated, so we can take them off the table because we haven't got a geographical footprint to base 2 and 3 on. As far as the financial taking away of those car parks, my understanding is, and from my recollection, the people that really would like the car parking have been given those numbers. I could be wrong, but from my recollection, that has been put in the public domain. What I am giving confidence and comfort about is that the consultants that would be sought, if we go to point 2, would have expertise in mediation, and that is really, really important for Crescent Head, because no matter what we decide today, or actually what's decided in the end, there would still be conflict about the people that would prefer the car parking to the people that would prefer the green space. It doesn't matter which way we go, that will always be there. Having been sitting at this table talking about master plans for Crescent Head for 13 years now, and it was talked about for years before that, we have to do something. To do nothing is just going to make it worse, in my view. And from experience, we didn't take that advice from our staff before, and we've ended up in the position that we're in now. For me, I'm really happy with the recommendation that's put forward.
All right, thank you. Councillor Craigie and then Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was just thinking about that amended motion to include the 13-metre strip in the scope. I have just concern with doing that, just on terms of setting up unrealistic expectations, because as soon as we say it's in scope, we're talking in legal terms, and then the community will see, okay, it's in scope, and then if the end result after we've done our cost benefits analysis is that that we're not going ahead with that, then the community is losing faith in us, and it will cause more controversy. I support the original motion, but at the same time, I understand that there are community members that have their concerns and are wanting to protect that space, whilst not being 100% clear what their plans are with that space. So I'm happy to support this motion, the original motion, and regardless, just in terms of community consultation and all of that, and I know that that's been done. I wonder if we could actually collate that in a document of a cost benefits analysis, and yeah, have that actually as part of our documentation. Thank you.
So just to be clear, Councillor Craigie, you're suggesting we put a document on public exhibition, or for people to get the information?
I'm suggesting that because the discussions have already been made, right?
Yep.
We've run the numbers. Okay, it's to go against the original motion. It will cost the community $60,000 to $80,000 per annum. The ratepayer shouldn't have to pay for that. The businesses shouldn't have to pay for that. So, but it seems to me that the community don't understand that. So, if they had a cost benefits analysis and they said, okay, well, yeah, it's going to cost 60 grand, but we still want this space, well, do they want to pay for it?
Yeah, I see your point. When we move back into, or we could actually put it in now, you're actually amending this so that we inform the public by putting out a cost benefit analysis and possibly putting it on our website. Is that what you're suggesting?
That is what I'm suggesting, a cost benefit analysis.
Mr. General Manager, how would that work?
Through Mr. Mayor, certainly I think as should council determine in line with the current recommendation, I think there's a number of ways we can actually proceed with that. Following today, there obviously would need to be a media release following today anyway, and staff are probably already working on that behind the scenes. We could actually be making some comments around that, but on the project page for this as well, we could actually put a summary of what we've talked about today, put those key figures onto that project page, so people who actually got that point of reference can actually understand that impact. So there'll be no issues with doing that whatsoever. So there'll be a few different streams where we can actually put that out.
So a simple amendment along that, but council.
You wouldn't even need to do an amendment. You could if you wish to, but we would actually do that as a matter of course, given the discussion that's actually been here. We would just do that anyway.
And we do have a project page, so people who want to get more information, Councillor Craig, could go to that.
Yeah,
that's a positive way to go with that. Councillor Freeman, you wish to speak?
Just looking at all the figures, and I do believe it would be awesome if there was more room for kind of public access in the way of kind of park space. But I'm realising that the caravan park is quite a hard target to take that from. So for the future, I think it's really important that they have more space. But maybe could we put something in place that we look at future spaces that could be developed for park space and that kind of like public access that we could actually make accessible to people. So maybe even I know the golf course isn't quite as financially viable as the caravan park. Is there any way we could put down on paper that we kind of look at that in the future as providing more public space? Is there any way we can do that on paper, that we could introduce that idea, or is that something that council is already looking at, or what's the future? Because I'd like to see more space in the future, especially as the demand for it grows.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. A response, please.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, it's actually a very good question, and a number of councillors have actually raised that with me. There's certainly always in foreshore areas like this the need for more space. At the moment, the country club does have a lease on the golf course that they do operate, and it is public space, and some members of the public do use it. You need to be careful by saying we will look at this again in the future, because what that will do is actually bring uncertainty to the community. And one of the things we're trying to do at the moment is give the community some certainty about where we're going. And a future council in 5, 10, 50 years' time, the country club may look at that differently. We don't know. But what we do know we need at the moment is some certainty for the community. So we need to actually provide that, give them this area that we can actually discuss, get that implemented, and then let the future deal with the future at that particular point in time. And I think, you know, there certainly have been people who have discussed how you might use that area in the future, but it's certainly not a lot of people in the community. And at the moment, what we need to give to the residents of Crescent Head in particular is some certainty. And I think that would just raise some uncertainty that isn't needed at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Wyatt, please.
Thank you. I have a few points, but I'll start with the carrying capacity. There is no such thing as infinite growth. There is a carrying capacity, and whether we set it or not, the environment will set it. So there's a carrying capacity about what the environment will cope with, what the landscape will cope with, and what sea level will cope with. We are loving this place to death. All around the world, we are loving our natural places to death, and Yellowstone being at that higher end where you've got massive. So there is a carrying capacity, whether we set it or not, there is. And if we continue to think that there is infinite growth, we are going to lose the very value that everyone in the Shire and the region and the state and the council who come to Crescent Head for those values, they will be gone. So I think that's one of the primary principles that we really should be thinking about, is there is a carrying capacity. And then I just wanted to just follow up on a couple of conversations. Firstly, we mentioned, and I love the idea about updating the project page or a media release or something along those lines. And I just put it out there to the community engagement team, is something like an infographic, a one-page infographic, like the postcard that we just put out for Southwest Rocks. And you can't just rely on a website. You have to think broader. And again, that's local, that's state, that's Shire-wide. So just broaden that consultation bit. You might be doing that already, I'm not sure. But just think about it as an infographic, really simple, something really simple that people can read. My next question, I just want to follow up, two more questions. I just want to follow up with what Councillor Campbell said in her. She mentioned council ignored some advice back in whenever. What advice was that council ignored?
In the first instance, the recommendation to council was that the Crescent Head foreshore part of the domain at that point needed further engagement and consultation. At that council meeting, there was an amendment moved, given the public speaker, and the majority of councillors decided then and there to come up and endorse one of the plans that were put to us. And I think in hindsight, and I was part of that decision, and sometimes you regret some of the decisions that you make, and that was one of them, because that was making policy on the run, and we didn't fully understand the reasoning why the staff had told us that that's what we needed to do. They had already foreseen that this would be a divisive within the community, and this is what we're living with now. And at that point, some of the people that were in the community, that are in the community now, wanting something different to what we had on the run decided was the way to go, weren't involved or weren't part of the conversation at that time. So that's what I meant by that.
no follow up. Thank you for that, and that's really good reflection, and that's really good lessons learnt and self reflection, and I agree. And my final question is: it was brought to my attention that if we go to page 23 of our plan here, and one of the plans, it's got the Crescent Head Holiday Park short-term and medium-term alternative plan, and it's got number 9 there, which says reconfigure. Can you just clarify that is reconfiguring within or with? That's not this 13 metres, is it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was part of the master plan for the holiday parks. Council has resolved for that. There was a consideration at that time to place some cabins along there, but Council has resolved not to do that.
So that's not this 13 metres. That's within the footprint of the caravan park.
That 9 metres there is within the caravan park, but it is basically the same area as the 13 metres.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, the 13 metres was within the holiday park area. Yeah.
So it can be reconfigured within the frame of what the caravan park is, but it may not. There are issues around reconfiguring it for this 13 metres of yet to be decided what that land is going to be used for.
The original plan was in the draft, one of the options was to reconfigure that to place cabins along the front of that within the holiday park to increase the revenue stream for the holiday park. Council listened to the community at the time and who said that they didn't really want the cabins along there, and therefore we would leave that as it is and just look at it as sites, not as cabins.
Yep.
So that's that part of it. The discussion we had from Mr. Dennis last night, the proposal there was to use that exact same footprint as public open space and take away the holiday park. Yeah.
It's changing the land use, potentially.
Correct, from something that's income generation to something that's going to cost us.
Just a question.
Councillor Campbell.
Just a question, and I probably know the answer to this. In the economic modelling, if we had decided to leave those cabins, the financial benefit back to the community would be significantly more than what has been outlined to us today. You're only using them as campsites.
Mr. Mitchell might have the numbers in his head.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. I wish I had them to recall them that easily. The income from a cabin. So you would take up more tourist sites than for one cabin. So the proposal that was before council in April last year would have meant that we lost, I think, around about a dozen tourist sites to put sort of 6 cabins or thereabouts. But the yield and the income that's come from a cabin is substantially higher than a tourist site. So the tourist site, you might sort of get around about sort of $15,000 there or thereabouts per annum for someone with a caravan or a tent or that sort of thing, whereas a cabin is substantially more, and particularly in that location. And obviously at that time that's what the staff recommendation was, because it had a substantial financial benefit. But as the general manager referenced, the decision was made to adopt the alternative plans rather than the recommended plans at that stage. And so what's included in here, and the reason it's referenced as alternative plan because it wasn't the plan that we had recommended as part of those 10-year concept plans at that stage. But yes, it would have been a substantially greater financial benefit.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. A follow-up? Then Councillor Whittington.
So the compromise, from memory, can you just confirm this to me? From memory, the compromise for councillors to make that decision to not go with the cabins was to give the appearance of more open space and to have to listen to the community and do that compromise there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. There was very strong feedback around from the community that they didn't want cabins in those prime locations, and obviously they would have been abutting that open space, and so that was sort of the primary driver for that decision.
Councillor Riddington, please.
Thank you for that information. I too have thought very long and hard about this. Just a quick question for Director Mitchell. So when we're looking at that piece of land, is that going to be like for people to just bring their caravans and park them up, or is it permanent vans getting away from the hut type things?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is actually they're tourist sites, so people will bring tents, they'll bring caravans. Yeah,
Thank
so they'll be
you.
constantly changed over.
Lovely, thank you.
Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, thank you very much for that information. And I think having that information now in the public domain and seeing what the financial implications are, I'm happy to withdraw the proposed amendment that I made and support the original motion.
Can I move we go back? Oh,
Councillor Campbell again, please.
I move we go back into open council.
Thank you. We'll move back into open council. I'll now ask for a seconder.
Councillor Patterson.
No, we don't having calling outs in council meeting.
Sorry.
Do we have a seconder for going back into open council? Councillor Patterson, thank you. I put the motion, we go back into open council. Anyone dissenting? Thank you. We're now back in open council. We have the motion before us. We've had the debate. Right of reply. I know about the right of reply, Councillor Patterson, and would you please not interrupt? I was just about to explain what can happen next. So, any of those things we've discussed in Committee of the Whole can now be moved as an amendment. And if no one wishes to move any, the original motion will be put. And at that point, we will have the mover in reply. So, do we have anyone wishing to speak for or against the recommendation in front of us? And does anyone wish to move an amendment? Councillor Wyatt, please.
I think this is moving an amendment. We discussed in the committee about putting out some information, printed information to the community, whether that be updating the project page, media release, infographic, and that information to be made available locally to the community out at Crescent Head, to the Shire, to the region, to the broader community. So I'd just like to add that to a motion that that updated information be made available to the community.
So that would be a point 4, but we'd need the words precisely. But I'll get advice from the General Manager, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, something along the lines, point 4, that council provides to the community via various means information in relation to cost impacts and the decision of council.
That takes in what Councillor Craigie mentioned as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're just getting that typed up so we know what we're voting on. And yes, I'll be coming to you, Councillor Patterson, for a response on whether you wish to move it into yours.
No, just that's what I was asking.
Yes, a question from Councillor Patterson.
Something that's doable. Yeah, I'd accept that into the motion.
But it comes up as a amendment move and then accepted, yes.
We'll format that correctly when we do the draft minutes. It's a lengthy motion. It's part of the motion.
Yeah, thank you very much. That has now become part of the motion because the mover has accepted it. Do we have any further debate for or against the recommendation?
Yep.
Councillor Freeman, please.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on that last amendment, I'm not sure how much that will cost council to do, but even if they went as far as just providing a printout that we could go and give to the interest groups in Crescent Head, even that as a minimum would be a fantastic option. That way we're not burdening council on a massive expense on posting them out or something like that.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Mr. General Manager, any advice?
Certainly, we wouldn't be looking at posting anything out anyway. What we will do, though, is, as we said, there'll be some media on it. There'll be certainly stuff on the on the page. We'll do an infographic or something similar to that. We'll provide that to the councillors in the councillor update as well, so that can go out. And various means. It might go into the council newsletter. It might be our comms team. That's their specialty. That's what they do. And they'll work out all those avenues to actually get that out there. So, but councillors will be able to take what we put in the councillor update and share that as wide as you like.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Do you have a supplementary question? Because you've spoken in favour of that. You can't speak again.
No, yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. No one else seeking the call. I ask the mover, Councillor Patterson, if he wishes to speak in response, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Campbell has spoken about, that this has been a very long process, and by no means this is the end of the process. This is just a continuation. Originally, when I thought that we were just going to designate that we're just going to look at that small parking area and there was no other options, we weren't going to, when this is me thinking, we weren't going to have any consultation with the community. I thought originally that I didn't necessarily support this, but after reading this over and over again, this recommendation, after talking with council staff, which are very, very beneficial to me, to us as a whole council, I really look forward to the future development, the future needs that council can bring to the Crescent Head community and to the whole community, because that is the thing that we have to remember, that we are making decisions for the whole community. And I look forward to council supporting this recommendation.
Thank you, and thank you for your words, Councillor Patterson. We will.
And I just.
Yes,
I'm not supposed to. I just. It's actually, instead of cost, it should be financial impacts, not cost impacts. It should be financial impacts.
In the actual motion.
Yeah, I've deliberately left that one open. Yeah. Yep. To the financial impacts.
The financial. Could we add that in, please?
Yeah, just go financial instead of costs.
Yes. Well, they we're making sure that we've got what we're voting on up on the screen, so we're all sure of that. It's just been slightly amended. In point 4, it now reads, provides to the community by various means information in relation to the financial impacts and the decision of council. Anyone unclear on that? Okay. You have a question, Councillor White, because you can't ask any further questions after the move in reply, okay?
It's in relation. Okay, yeah, I'm still trying to learn how to run this thing.
Okay.
It's in relation to number 4. Yep.
Yes.
And just the financial.
I'm sorry. Once the move in reply has spoken, there can be no more debate and no more questions. I'm sorry to tell you that, Councillor White. But that's the.
Don't I get to talk to the motion that I just put up, the number 4?
No, sorry. That's already occurred, and because Councillor Patterson has spoken in reply, the rules say we now must put to the vote the recommendation in front of us, or the motion in front of us. So I will now put that.
Well, I don't agree.
And it's a dissent vote only on this. Anyone oppose the motion before us? Would you raise your hand if anyone opposes it? I declare it carried unanimously. Thank you, Council, for getting through that so well. And I really appreciate the efforts from everyone in the committee as a whole. We now move on to item 9.2, and we do so well on that, as well as the previous one. We could be rewarded by going to morning tea afterwards. So 9.2 is Kempsey Airport, commercial agreement for pilot training proposal. The officer in charge is Galen Burley, the manager of commercial business, and the recommendation that has come to us is that recommendation on page 31. I would like a mover, Councillor Campbell.
I move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I need a seconder, Councillor Bain. Councillor Campbell, would you like to speak in favour of the motion, please?
I'll reserve my right, but I think I'll just say that the recommendation sets out very clearly what the the terms and the contract will be. I know we had the benefit of hearing the owner of the new aviation college speak to us yesterday, that anyone can access on the public forum YouTube. And I think this is a really great step forward for the community, and it would be really great to have a flying school back at Kempsey Airport.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Do we have another speaker? We're going to move it. The second is already seconded, so we now have a speaker. Councillor Freeman, please.
Yeah, just a question to the council staff through the mayor. Is there any other companies that have that are interested in taking up this position? Like, is there any other more competitive bids on as far as a business deal?
I'll get the advice from the General Manager, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. This isn't actually a bid. It's actually, this is a company there. Another company could come in and set up another flying school if they so chose. But to do that, they'd still have to follow the previous council resolutions from 2019 and go through a similar process of demonstrating a quadruple bottom line benefit to the community. So you can have more than one there, but they do have to go through that process.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman, and thank you, General Manager. Do we have any other commentary? Councillor Wyatt, please, and then Councillor Bain.
It's just a question on the report here it's on page, it doesn't matter. It says establishing a community group called Kempsey Airport Reference Group. Has that group been established?
Okay, Mr. General Manager, please.
Through Mr. Mayor, yeah, that's a historic reference. So it was the group was set up to actually assist with developing the fly neighbourly document and those sorts of things. So it actually had a sunset clause, so it's actually seen its term and it's actually gone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Bain, please.
I'd just like to express my appreciation to staff that have put this together, but also to the people that spoke at the public forum yesterday, that I know in the past the airport has been a divisive issue, and the fact that we've had people speaking together, communicating with each other and expressing their trust and good faith, I think is a really positive step, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Any other speaker? If there's no other speaker, the recommendation is in front of you at the motion. Councillor Campbell, do you wish to speak?
No, I think everyone said what they needed to say, and I endorse what Councillor Bain also referenced.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I'll put the motion as printed. Any dissent on that motion? No dissent. I declare it carried. And I now declare we are adjourned for morning tea, and we'll be back at 10 minutes to 11. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. We're back for the second session of the Kempsey Shire Council meeting on the 15th of March 2022. Advise people viewing that if you hear alarms going off, at the present time the alarm system at Kempsey Council chambers are being tested. Do not be alarmed. We won't be alarmed much. Thank you very much. We're moving on to item 9.3. It's a planning proposal. It's PP 2021/7403, Rosedale Avenue, Southwest Rocks. It's on page 38 of the business agenda. The recommendation is there before you. I would seek a mover.
Move that way.
That's only one person moving it, so that's Councillor Patterson. Thank you. I seek a seconder for the motion. Councillor Freeman. Is there any debate? Yep, lights on. Councillor Freeman has a question.
Yeah, probably to council staff through the mayor. With doing this change, they're not avoiding any environmental levies that they'd have to pay or anything like that. So they're not. Is there any environmental compensation that they should be doing that we're helping them avoid by doing this?
No.
Answer, no. Thank you, Councillor Wyatt.
Yes, I want to speak against. I want to speak against.
Yeah, you can speak against.
Okay.
Please. You don't
I just feel I have an in principle issue with this, and I feel that the environment. I think that planning should fit into the environment, not the environment fit into planning. And I see that it could be a mapping error, but for me, it's a principle that environment shouldn't have to be modified to fit into planning, is that planning needs to fit the environment. And if the LEP said that was a conservation zone to begin with, well, why did they not? Why did they then encroach into that conservation zone to make those lots? Why was it not built within its boundary is my first question or point. And my second issue is around that little bit of land which is highlighted in blue, and I think the speaker yesterday said it was 40 hectares which could have a house on it in the future. So that's also within a conservation zone. And I know that Conservation 1 zone is a national park, Conservation 2 is a little bit less of environmental protection, and then you've got C3, which is even less environmental protection. Then they're often buffer zones or they're often buffer zones in inverted commas or sacrificial zones. And again, for me, it's an in principle matter. So therefore I am speaking against, or not in favour of it rather.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. Councillor Patterson, I apologise to you. I didn't ask whether you would like to speak to the motion.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see this as a fairly straightforward issue, especially looking at page 40, showing the plan and the non-alignment of the zoning. So I think this is just a small issue that just needs to be fixed up. Obviously, somewhere along the line, planning department possibly didn't talk to another department, or was some misalignment, as we have seen this before with roads, etc. So yeah, I see this as a fairly straightforward change to an existing plan, which the development of this site out here has been passed.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Do we have any other speakers for or against? Any further questions? Councillor Bain, please.
Sorry, my concern is from a fire safety perspective, and I'm aware that around suburbs we have asset protection zones, and often what I believe is happening, and I may be wrong here, but what I believe is happening is that the often developments go right up to their boundary, and the asset protection zone are then therefore taken out of environmental areas. I'm just, I have read this several times, and I recall seeing something in it about environmental protection zones, or about RFS feedback. I'm just wondering if someone that may have read it more carefully than I had could give me some feedback on what was the position of the RFS or the Bushfire Management Committee in that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Mr. Fisher, please.
Yeah, so through the Mayor, within the attachments is a bushfire report which has been prepared by a consultant. The outcome of that report aligns with the actions which are to be undertaken under the consents of those two major project approvals anyway. So the consultant that's done that report is not necessarily suggesting any significant change to those actions that were or the requirements of the consent from the original major projects approvals. So it's quite a detailed report and an analysis of the site. It's obviously the previous major projects approvals considered, I guess, what is currently would be old guidelines back from which was obviously at the time of that were in place at the time of those major projects approvals from over 10 years ago. The consultant that has done the bushfire assessment has considered the current 2019 guidelines for assessment and has undertaken that in accordance with that. So it's obviously thorough and comprehensive, and the requirements of the conditions of consent will satisfy bushfire threat at that area.
Thank you, Director Fish. Councillor Freeman, you wish to speak for or against it?
Can I ask another question?
You certainly may ask another question.
What are our legal requirements on this? Are we legally kind of obliged to say yes, or do we have the option to say no or maybe?
Councillor Fish? Oh, yeah. Director Fish, excuse me. Fish. I'll let him
through the Mayor. So I guess the recommendation here is to proceed to gateway. The alternative to that would be to not proceed to a gateway determination. If you were to resolve, obviously the opposite to the recommendation, the applicant could seek a review of that decision. And as Councillor Patterson pointed out, it's I guess this particular planning proposal is largely an administrative one, just to address an anomaly, and I wouldn't suggest he'd be in a strong position to defend that.
Thank you, Director Fish, and thank you for the question, Councillor Freeman. Any other debates?
Yes.
Councillor White, please.
Question just in relation to that conservation zone, that C3 zone, and they've written a vegetation management plan and a management plan over that. A couple of questions is, who manages that conservation zone? Is it in perpetuity? How is it funded? Does council have a role there, and what is the compliance to make sure that that is managed as a conservation zone in accordance with that vegetation management plan?
Thank you, Councillor White. Director Fish, please.
Yeah, so through the Mayor, so that plan was, I guess, part of the major projects approvals, obviously from several years ago. The requirement to comply with that, I guess, goes with the land, and that land is privately held, except the yellow portion, which is where our reservoirs are on. If you're looking at the map, which is on page 39. So yeah, that obviously continues to exist going forward.
Councillor White, follow up.
So in their vegetation management plan, they've got a couple of spots where they've listed Bitu, Lantana, Blackberry Bush. In 10 years' time, if there's no compliance over this, or there's no one sort of having oversight, it could be expected that that whole property could be Bitu Bush, and they've even got some revegetation plans in there. They could start planting or they could seed, but in 10 years' time, those plants may have not regenerated. So I guess it's private. It's sort of like private vegetation management land. I'm just wondering what the intent is in the future. Is how is this managed in the future? How do we ensure what decisions are being made in these? That's what it's going to look like in the future, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time.
Right, thank you. General Manager wishes to advise us.
Just if I can come in there, the questions Councillor White asked are very good questions, but they're actually not relevant to the decision of council. So the decision of council is about this boundary, and certainly we can take those offline and provide those answers.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Manager. No further debate or questions. I'll put the motion before you. Anyone dissenting? 2 dissents. Thank you, Councillor White and Councillor Craigie. All other councillors are voting in favour. Again, apologise to you, Councillor Patterson. I didn't ask whether you wish to reply. I'm getting there. Sorry. Right, the decisions are recorded. We're going on to 9.4, rental assessment and rebate. It's on page 43. The recommendation, again, from our Manager of Commercial Business is there before you. Does anyone wish to move that motion? If no one moves it, it lapses, and then we have no decision. So, Councillor Bain, you're moving. Thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Freeman. Councillor Bain, do you wish to speak to the recommendation?
Yeah, I believe that this is a strong recommendation, that it will address some of our financial implications, and I believe that through reading the papers that the greatest impact will be on commercial enterprises that have got significant income, and that significant income can then be that we can use that to provide better services to community. So I would commend this recommendation to my fellow councillors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Anyone wish to speak in favour or against it, or ask a question? Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, just speaking in favour of it. Looking at the recommendation, we're putting it out on exhibition for 28 days. So I don't see how there would be any concern with that, especially seems if any issues arise within the 28 days, they can be addressed. So if there's any problems in this proposal, people have time to comment and give feedback.
Thank you very much, Councillor Freeman. Any other debate? I'll get this right. The mover in reply, if he wishes.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I've got to get that right. I keep forgetting. Thank you very much. I'll put the motion. Anyone dissenting from the recommendation in front of us? Thank you. I declare it carried. The motion becomes the resolution of council. All the other matters have been dealt with in the exception voting, and we now come to confidential. So I ask the public gallery to clear, and that's very quick of them. Everyone's gone. We now move into confidential. I will ask for someone to move that we move into confidential. Councillor Riddington, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bain. All those in favour? Against? I should have said that, but thank you. So we're now in confidential, and we're going to
In regards to the matters considered by Council in closed session, in regards to item 11.1, Council resolved the Council receive and note the report and adopt the recommendations contained within with regard to the matter of Peter Keith Notley versus Kempsey Shire Council. In regards to item 11.2, sale of land for unpaid rates, Council resolved the Council, pursuant to Chapter 17, Part 2, Division 5, Sale of Land for Unpaid Rates and Charges of the Local Government Act 1993 and Local Government General Regulation 2021, commences sale proceedings to sell the properties listed in this report at a public auction at a time and place to be determined. 2. Appoints the Centre for Sustainable Debt Recovery Proprietary Limited to administer the sale on Council's behalf. 3. Authorises the General Manager to withdraw from the list of properties any property that, prior to the commencement of the auction, has all rates and charges payable, including overdue rates and charges paid in full. 4. Does not accept any approach by the landowners to make arrangements for repayments of the outstanding rates and charges over a period of time. 5. Authorises the General Manager or their delegate to execute contracts and transfer documents pertaining to the properties specified in the body of the report. And 6. Reserves the right to withdraw any property from sale for technical or legal reasons. In relation to item 11.3, Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, February 2022 meeting minutes and annual activity report, Council resolved the Council receive and note the draft meeting minutes from the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, 8th of February 2022, and 2. Annual Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee and Internal Audit Report for 2021. In relation to item 11.4, Rehabilitation of Apron and Taxiways at Kempsey Airport, TQE 22/1, Council resolved the Council authorise the General Manager or their delegate to 1. Accept the tender submitted by Antoon Civil Engineering Proprietary Limited for a lump sum value of $1,202,477 ex-GST, subject to finalising the negotiation of items listed within the tender evaluation report, and 2. Approve any necessary variations to the contract within the total project budget.
Thank you, Mr. Thorogood. I'll now close the meeting and declare it closed at 11:32. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff, for a productive council meeting.